My name is Raisa Ahmadi. I am from Iran, and this is the story of my life, a tale of scars, faith, and transformation. Every mark on my body holds a piece of my journey, which began on the bustling streets of Qom, a city where religious fanaticism is as natural as the air you breathe. To understand my testimony, you have to understand that in Iran, faith is not just a belief. It is part of the soul, the blood that runs through the veins, the rhythm of the heart that beats in every moment of existence. I was born in 1985 into a family with deep roots in Islam, 3 generations of mullahs. My father, Hassan Ahmadi, was a respected figure, teaching Islamic jurisprudence at the Qom Seminary. My grandfather, in turn, was an early supporter of the Islamic Revolution, and in our home, devotion was not just a practice, but a way of life from dawn to dusk. My mother was descended from a special lineage, the Sayyids, those who trace their direct ancestry back to the Prophet Muhammad. Her faith was so intense that even at home she never took off the black chador that covered her body, exposing only her face. I remember her saying, her voice full of conviction, "Paradise lies beneath the feet of mothers who raise warriors for Allah." That was the spirit that dominated our home. In our daily lives, prayer, namaz, was not just an obligation. It was the axis that supported our entire existence. 5 times a day without fail, our home would become a true sanctuary. My father guided us with a strong voice that made the walls seem to vibrate. He recited verses from the Quran with a precision that I already memorized before I could. At the age of 6, I already knew large passages of the holy book. Every morning before Fajr, the dawn prayer, he would wake me up so we could recite it together. Even in the bitter cold of the early mornings in Qom, I could feel my heart burning with his childlike. He would proudly tell me, "Your name means one who pleases Allah, and that must be the reason for your every breath." My childhood memories are painted in intense hues, especially red. During the month of Ashura, the streets of Qom would become rivers of pain and faith. From the age of 8, I would march in self-flagellation processions, beating my chest in time with the chants that mourned the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. For us, physical pain was an honor, a way of showing our loyalty to the imams who sacrificed their lives for Islam. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbow. My younger sister, Sarah, disappeared from my life when she was 12. She was sent to live with an aunt in Mashhad after my father discovered that she listened to pop music, an unforgivable sin in his eyes. Her absence became a constant reminder of the price of disobedience in our family. I spent most of my days in the madrasa, where the teachings were not only about the Quran or hadiths, but also about how to be a true warrior of faith. Our teachers made no secret of the fact that Islam is not only a religion of peace, it is a religion of truth, and this truth must be defended even with one's life. These words echoed in my adolescent heart, igniting a great desire to prove myself in the cause of Allah. By the time I was 15, my reputation as a devout young man was known throughout the neighborhood. I volunteered to join the morality police, the patrols that watched for any sign of behavior contrary to Islamic precepts. The sense of power that came from reprimanding a woman for showing a strand of hair, or interrupting a group of young people listening to Western music, fed not only my ego, but also my belief that I was serving something divine. My dreams were filled with images of martyrdom, inspired by the stories we were told about the young men who died in the war against Iraq. I believed that this was the right path, a life dedicated to Allah until my last breath. On the walls of my room hung the photos of the martyrs, those brave young men who ran through minefields to clear the way for the troops. Their eyes, calm and steady, seemed to watch me every time I looked. They made me a silent promise. One day, I too could achieve that immortal. But God, in His infinite mercy, had a different plan, a path that would only begin to reveal itself on a special night during Ramadan. It would forever change the course of my life. I was 17 years old. My heart burned with the flame of fanaticism. As an active member of the Basij, the youth militia that defended Islam, I was known for my total dedication to the cause. My father, filled with pride, watched me on night patrols, while I watched the streets and corrected any behavior that deviated from the sacred precepts. At the mosque, where I spent most of my free time, my hands were often injured as I punished those who strayed from the path of Allah. Under the tutelage of the leader, we immersed ourselves in nights of rigorous study of Sharia, the sacred laws of Islam, and inflicted extreme punishments. For us, pain was purification. Each drop of blood spilled erased our sin. I remember well one hot night in the summer of 2002. We received a tip-off, a secret meeting in a house on the outskirts of Qom. When we arrived, we saw a group of young university students celebrating a birthday. The image of their frightened faces when we broke down the door still haunts me. My anger exploded that night, especially toward a young man who tried to shield his sister from our blows. I beat him until my hands hurt, believing with all my heart that I was doing a sacred service to Allah. My body bore the marks of this total surrender. During Ramadan, I would fast beyond what was permitted. I would even refuse to swallow my saliva, convinced that such extremism would make me pure, closer to holiness. At the Islamic university where I studied theology, I joined a secret group of students who practiced radical forms of devotion. In the basement of the mosque, we performed rituals that went beyond the bounds of tradition. Some burned their skin with hot irons while reciting verses from the Quran. Others fasted until they lost consciousness. I stood out for enduring pain like few others. My reputation grew so much that Ayatollah Musavi, our leader, entrusted me with a special mission: to identify any sign of apostasy or religious deviation within the university. I became the eyes and ears of the religious police, eavesdropping on conversations, scanning cell phones for any Western or Christian influence. Each report, each family I delivered, was for me another medal on my journey, proof of my commitment to faith. One of my most difficult tasks was to participate in the interrogations of suspected apostasies. In the darkened basement room of the mosque, I watched, sometimes even participated, as the deviants were pressured to return to the right path of the sound of the screams mixed with the prayers that echoed through the speakers, creating a kind of dark symphony in my fanatical head, seemed like divine music. It was on a night like that that everything changed. We had received information about a group of Christian converts who were meeting secretly in a house in the old calm neighborhood. Ayatollah Musavi chose me to lead the attack, a clear sign of his confidence in my religious fervor. "Remember," he told me, handing me the address, "apostasy is punishable by death. Tonight, you will render a great service to Allah." As I drove to the location with a group of 5 Basij members, my heart was pounding with excitement for the mission. But there was something different, a quiet restlessness that gnawed at me from within. Little did I know at the time that God was beginning to work in me in ways I could never have imagined. When we arrived, the house looked ordinary, like so many others in the old city. But from inside came an unexpected sound, soft, almost hypnotic singing in Farsi. It wasn't the shouting or music we were expecting. We followed our protocol, circling the house. My hand closed tightly on my baton as I gave the signal to break down the door. The crash of wood mixed with cries of surprise. We stormed in, but what we found there was not the degenerate gathering we had expected. In the center of the room sat about a dozen people, mostly families, in a circle. An open Bible lay before them, and the sight of it made my blood boil. But what stopped me in my tracks was not the book, but the eyes of a lady who stared at me with unshakable calm. "Welcome, son," she said in a calm voice. Amidst the chaos we had caused, it was Mariam. I only learned her name much later. His next words were like a blade that pierced my soul. "We have been praying." Fury took hold of me. How dare that infidel speak to me so calmly? How could she say that they were praying for me? Before I could think, my fist hit her in the face. But when she fell, something inexplicable happened. Mariam smiled, and her eyes showed not hatred, but compassion. The attack continued. We arrested everyone, confiscated their Bibles and Christian books. But something inside me had already changed. Her words, "We've been praying for you," refused to leave my mind. Why would anyone forgive and pray for their persecutor? When I reported the attack to the Ayatollah, my hands were shaking. I described everything except Mariam's words. For the first time, I felt like I was protecting an enemy of the faith, and I didn't understand why. In the weeks that followed, doubt consumed me. I tried to drown it with more devotion, more rituals, more violence against the infidels. But each time during an attack, when I hit someone, I would see Mariam's compassionate eyes. Her words echoed in my head, even during interrogation. And then, on one such occasion, I came face to face with her. Her injuries were visible. Other interrogators had been less gentle than I had been, but her spirit remained unbroken. When I asked Mariam why she had converted to Christianity, her answer took me by surprise. She said she had found a God who did not demand our blood but shed his own out of love for us. That night, alone in my room, I reached for a Bible that had been confiscated during the attack. It was an act of betrayal. It could have cost me my life, but something inside me was stronger than. I opened those pages expecting to find errors and lies, but instead I found words that began to shake the walls of my fanaticism. Secret visits to Mariam's cell became more frequent, always with the excuse of interrogating her. He would spend hours listening to her explanations of the gospel. Each word was like fresh water in the midst of the desert of my thirsty soul. She told me about Jesus, a man who washed his disciples' feet, forgave his tormentors, and loved even his enemies. This was not the Isaac I knew. He was someone much more disturbing, and at the same time irresistibly attractive. My inner crisis grew with each passing day. During the day, I fulfilled my duties in the Basij, but each act of violence left me more torment. At night, hidden under the blankets and in the light of my cell phone, I read the Bible. The words of Jesus, especially in the Sermon on the Mount, shattered everything I thought I knew about God. One verse in particular haunted me. You have heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. How could a God ask for love from enemies? My entire life had been shaped by hatred of infidels, and now those revolutionary words shook the foundations of my faith. The final straw was when I discovered that Miriam had been sentenced to death for apostasy. I myself had signed many of those sentences, believing it to be just. But this time, just thinking about it made me feel physical pain, a deep anguish. I did something I never thought I could do. I knelt in my room, and for the first time I prayed to the God of Miriam. It was the night I knelt before Jesus that my life changed forever. The words came out choked, mixed with tears of confusion and, "God, if you are real, if you are truly the God of love that Miriam speaks of, show me the truth. I can't live like this anymore." My conversion did not come as a divine flash or a voice in the silence. It was a slow, painful awakening to a truth I had struggled with all my life. Every page of the Bible I read in secret was like a hammer breaking the chains of my fanaticism. Every whispered conversation with Miriam in prison was a seed of light planted in the darkness of my soul. The decision to help her escape consumed me for days. I knew it would mean betraying everything I stood for and putting my family in danger, but the thought of being an accomplice in her execution was unbearable. With the help of a guard who had also been touched by her testimony, we arranged for Miriam to escape during a night transfer. News of her escape triggered a relentless manhunt. As one of the lead investigators, I was to lead the search. Every minute was torture. I feigned zeal while in my heart I prayed she wouldn't be found. My father noticed the change. "You pray differently. Your voice trembles when you recite the Quran," he said. It all came crashing down one Friday after. I forgot to clear my phone history after reading an e-Bible. My younger brother Ali found her while I was at the mosque. When I got home, I found my father waiting for me. With a fury I had never seen before, he held my phone like a weapon and called me a traitor to Allah, shouting in a voice that sounded like a roar. The man who had taught me to recite the Quran was now using his fist to try to rip what he called a Christian demon out of me. My devastated mother cried in a corner, tearing her hijab in mourning. My younger brother watched in silence, a mixture of horror and revulsion. "I prefer a dead son to an unfaithful son," my father shouted, as he brutally beat me. When he finally left me lying on the floor, covered in blood, he uttered the words I had been dreading. "You have until dawn to repent. If you don't, I will hand you over to the revolutionary tribunal myself." On that dark night, I felt firsthand what Jesus meant when he carried his cross. In the silence of my room, I whispered, "Forgive me for the pain this causes you. I love you." It was then that the clandestine network of believers that Miriam spoke of became my lifeline. Before dawn, a contact discreetly picked me up on the outskirts of Qom. For the next few weeks, I was on the run, moving from house to house, always one step ahead of the authorities. Now I was wanted not only as an apostate, but as a traitor to the regime. Each safe haven brought painful stories of the cost of discipleship. I met Hamid, who had lost his medical license because of his faith, Sarah, who had been imprisoned along with her children and bore scars from torture, and many others who stood firm despite the high cost. News of my conversion spread quickly. My picture was splashed across local newspapers. "Son of respected clergyman joins Christian sect." My father gave public interviews denouncing me and calling for my arrest. My family held a symbolic funeral, declaring the end of a life, while Christ opened a new door for me. The underground church welcomed me as family. There, I learned that the Islam I practiced so fervently was, in fact, a prison, and that the truth of Christ, even though it was dangerous in Iran, brought a freedom that no persecution could take away. But my past as a persecutor haunted me. Every face I had hurt, every family destroyed, every fellow believer handed over to the authorities, they all weighed on my conscience like heavy stones. "How can you forgive me?" I asked. In secret meeting, the answer was always the same. "In the same way that Christ forgave you." My freedom as a Christian lasted only 43 days. I was captured by the Revolutionary Guards during a safe house exchange, a perfect trap. The sense of betrayal was bitter. Someone within our circle had sold my skin. The irony was not lost on me. The hunter had become the hunted. I was taken, blindfolded, to the Tawhid detention center in Tehran, a place designed to break the human spirit. I quickly recognized the strong smell of sweat, blood, and despair, a hallmark that every persecutor knows. But now, I was on the other side. "Pray for Maud," the lead interrogator sneered, leafing through my file. "The Ayatollah's prodigal son, the Basij lion who became a Christian lamb." His voice dripped with contempt. "Let's see how long your Jesus can silence your tongue." The first few days were a calculated torment: light torture, sleep deprivation, stress, painful positions, techniques I had helped perfect while in the Basij. My former comrades took turns spitting on me, beating me, trying to prove their loyalty to the regime by punishing the traitorous commander I had become. He personally led some of the torture sessions. "You disappoint me," he would say, as he stubbed out cigarettes on my arm. "You who knew the truth of Islam have now been led astray by Christian lies." Each burn was followed by a promise, the chance to repent if I confessed. But my silence persisted, and the techniques intensified. The blows of the phalanges on the soles of my feet became a daily routine. The pain was indescribable, a flame that seemed to consume everything. But what sustained me was not my own strength. It was the memory of Jesus' words that I had memorized. "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake." One particularly brutal night, I was hung upside down like a bat, blood pooling in my head, and my shoulders burning under the pressure. The commander approached with a cold, calculating proposition. "Your father is devastated. Just say it was a mistake, that the Christians brainwashed you and you can go home." The mention of my father triggered a flood of memories. Late nights reciting the Quran, his proud face when I joined the Basij, and then his look of betrayal. The last time I saw him, tears were mixing with the blood running down my swollen face. "Your Jesus is not here," Hosseini, the interrogator, whispered. "But we can end this, or make it last forever." To emphasize his threat, he pressed a metal object against my back. An electric shock coursed through my body, causing me to convulse violently, and my scream echoed through the halls of the detention center. The days blended into a continuum of pain. Interrogations kept me locked in a cell so small I could barely lie down. A concrete closet, with a light that never went out. Enforced insomnia began to eat away at my mind. I saw shadows on the walls and heard voices that weren't there. A particular cruelty was making me hear the screams of other prisoners. They claimed to be Christians, imprisoned because of me. Each scream was a dagger stuck in my conscience. I had betrayed someone, and it consumed me. During the interrogations, lost in delusions, he could no longer distinguish what was real from what was imagination. But the hardest part wasn't the physical pain, it was the spiritual battle. In the midst of that hell, doubts kept creeping in. What if this is all a mistake? What if Islam is right and I'm damning my soul? The verses of the Quran that I had recited since I was a child warred with the words of Christ in my mind. But it was in my darkest moments that I felt the presence of God in a way that I had never known in my years of Islamic devotion. In the silence of my cell, between torture sessions, his peace reached me in inexplicable ways. Paul's words came to life. "When I am weak, then I am strong." The breaking point came on the 30th day of captivity. Ginny entered my cell with a Bible and a lighter in his hand. "It's simple," he said with a cruel smile. "Burn this book of lies, or we can start with more creative methods." His eyes shone with a promise of horror that froze my blood. At that critical moment, with the Bible and lighter before me, Miriam's words echoed in my mind. "A God who does not demand my blood, but shed his for me." My response was to spit blood on the floor and begin reciting the Gospel of John, which I had memorized. Ginny's fury unleashed a new wave of torture that brought me to the brink of death. Amidst the most intense pain I had ever known, Davoud appeared, a guard who stole water from my reserves at night. At first, I thought it was just another tactic to break me, but there was something different in his eyes, a compassion he couldn't hide. One night, in a barely audible whisper, he revealed to me, "My sister is also a Christian. She is imprisoned in Mashhad." Davoud became my only link to the outside world. He knew that the underground church was fasting and praying for me. He also told me that my case had attracted international attention, which was why I had not yet been executed. The regime did not want another Christian martyr in the headlines. The nights in my cell became moments of communion with God. My body was broken, but my spirit found supernatural strength. I began to sing softly to Davoud, songs I had learned in the underground church. The guards beat me to make me stop, but the melodies became my shield against despair. One day, a new prisoner was brought into the cell next door. Through the thin wall, I heard his crying. It was Hamid, a college student arrested for possessing Christian literature. We began communicating by gently knocking on the wall, a simple code we could. At night, I taught him Bible verses, stroke by stroke. Hamid's presence gave me a new purpose. I was no longer simply surviving, I was ministering. When the guards tortured him, I sang louder so he could hear me. When he cried out in pain, I beat the wall rhythmically, reminding him that he was not alone. My own father came to visit me once, accompanied by Commander Hosseini. His face was aged with grief and shame. "My son," he pleaded, "just say the words. Return to Islam. I cannot bear to see you like this." I replied, quoting Jesus, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of." That was the last time I saw my father. The torture continued, but something had changed inside me. Each session became an opportunity for testimony. As they beat me, I prayed aloud for my torturers. When they plunged me into ice-cold water, I emerged quoting scripture. My resilience infuriated and perplexed them equal measure. One particularly cold night, after a brutal session, Davoud found me semi-conscious in the cell. As he cleaned my wounds, he tearfully confessed that he had been reading a Bible his sister had given him. "Your faith," he said, "made me question everything I thought about God." Word reached my superiors that other guards were beginning to ask questions about Christianity. In response, they moved me to total isolation, a lightless hole where time lost all meaning. But even there, in the deepest darkness, God's presence was more real than ever. It was in that darkness that I had my most profound encounter with Christ. With no distractions, with no sound other than my own breathing, I experienced what mystics call the dark night of the soul. All pretense was stripped away, all pride was destroyed. Only the naked truth of my faith remained in that space of total solitude. I began to understand that my imprisonment was not just a test, it was a testimony. Every scar on my body became a seal of my love for Christ. Each day of suffering an offering of worship purer than all my previous prayers in the mosque. And then, freedom arrived. In the most unexpected. After 3.5 months of captivity, Davoud appeared in my cell in the middle of the dressed in a guard's uniform and carrying false documents. "You have 5 minutes," he whispered urgently. The next round would begin soon. My silent conversion had finally borne fruit. The plan had been meticulously orchestrated by the underground church, with the support of international contacts. Davoud had risked everything, his job, his freedom, even his life, to help someone he would have previously persecuted without hesitation. God's irony never ceased to amaze me. I put on my makeshift uniform and walked beside him through the dark corridors of the detention center. Each step was agony. My feet, soaked through from the falanga wounds, could barely support me. My heart was pounding so hard I feared the guards would hear it. "Christ showed me that the true Islam we preached was a prison," Davoud whispered in my ear. "Now you have shown me the cost of true Islam, freedom." On the way out, a vehicle was waiting at an agreed point, driven by church members. Little did I know that from there, they would take me to a safe house on the outskirts of Tehran. There, I spent weeks recovering, preparing myself for the odyssey that lay ahead. My face was already plastered on wanted posters all over the city, accused of apostasy, treason, and espionage. The journey to the Turkish border was a test of faith. We traveled only at night, moving between the homes of secret believers. Each family that welcomed us risked everything. Some were respected professionals, others were simple peasants, all united by an unshakable faith. In one of these homes I met Layla, a young doctor. She tended to my wounds with gentle hands and whispered prayers that healed not only the body, but also the tormented soul. The most dangerous part of the journey was crossing the mountains into Turkey. Our guide, a shepherd named Kado, knew every trail, every patrol. For 3 nights we climbed in the dark. During the day we hid in caves and abandoned shelters. The cold was brutal, but the fear of capture was even worse. One tense night, we came face to face with a border patrol. We huddled under bushes, holding our breath as the guards passed just a few feet away. I could hear their laughter, the clink of weapons, one movement, one sound, and it would all be over. On our last night in Iran, we camped in a cave near the border. Pastor Sido told his story. His father had been executed for his faith when he was still a child, but with a smile, he said, "Every martyr is a seed. Every believer I help escape is a victory over the darkness." Crossing the border was like waking up from a nightmare. On the other side, in Turkey, workers from an international Christian organization were waiting for me. For the first time in months, I could breathe without fear. Tears flowed freely as I knelt and kissed the ground of my newfound. But physical freedom brought new challenges. Nightmares haunted me. I woke up screaming, reliving the torture. Loud sounds made me jump. Certain smells forcibly brought back memories I wanted to forget. The trauma left its mark not only on my body, but also on my soul. In the refugee camp in Turkey, I began the long process of healing. I met other Iranian believers, each with their own story of persecution and liberation. Together we formed a small community of exiles, united by faith and the scars we carry. 2 months after my escape, I received news of the execution of my cellmate Hamid. His death haunted me, and I wondered if I could have done more for him. But his last message, transmitted through the underground network, gave me strength. "Tell Rhea that the knocks on the wall kept me alive until the end." Today, from the safety of my new home, I look back and see God's hand in every step of my journey. The scars on my body are a constant testimony that the cost of following Christ may be high, but His grace is always sufficient. My heart remains in Iran, with the brothers and sisters who continue to worship in secret. Every news story of arrests, reports of torture, and stories of new martyrs reminds me that persecution is not a thing of the past. It is a harsh daily reality for millions of believers around the world. Sometimes I think about my family. My mother managed to send me a message through the underground church. She has not forgiven me, but she prays every night for my safety. My brother Ali, surprisingly, has started asking questions about my faith. Seeds have been planted, and I trust that God will make them grow. Dawood, my guard-turned-ally, also escaped after his superiors became suspicious of him. Today, he serves in a ministry that helps other Iranian converts. His testimony reminds me that God can use even the darkest circumstances as glory. To you who read my story from the comfort of religious freedom, I urge you, never take this privilege for granted. The ability to open a Bible without fear, to worship openly, to share your faith without risk. These are precious gifts that millions only dream of having. More than just your sympathy, persecuted Christians need your active support, your prayers, and above all, your voice. Speak up for those who have been silenced. Tell your stories. Don't let the world forget that, as you read these words, there are brothers and sisters suffering their faith. My testimony is not unique. It is just one of thousands of similar stories from Iran and other countries where confessing Christ can cost everything. But every story of persecution is also a story of God's faithfulness, of His power to sustain His children in the darkest trials. I have forgiven my persecutors. Christ taught me that love is stronger than hate, and grace is more powerful than revenge. I continue to pray for their salvation, just as others prayed for mine when I was the persecuted. The church in Iran is growing not in spite of persecution, but in the midst of it. Every martyr, every prisoner, every displaced family is a seed that God uses to expand His kingdom. The regime that seeks to destroy the faith is unwittingly fueling its growth. My prayer is that my story will inspire you to value your faith more deeply, to be willing to pay whatever price it takes to follow Christ, and to remember those who are paying that price now. The God who sustained me in the torture cell, who gave me the strength to forgive my tormentors, who transformed my hatred into love, may He be glorified in every word of this testimony. Because in the end, this isn't just my story, it's the story of His unfailing grace and unconditional love. Amen.